before the presentation. Maybe before, like, just they will be shown in the background.
Okay, before we start, there is a sort of a video production being made, not actually of this presentation, but for educational purposes. And the makers of the production, they would hope if you could gather around, so that there would be more people in the shot. So would that be possible, so that you would reorganize and maybe Mr. Director will guide us?
If people can be on the red sofa would be great, and on those chairs, like. Can someone go like on the sofa still?
Janne, can you come on the sofa?
Okay, thank you. I'll look straight over.
Okay. This was a plot to get some audience for my presentation. So there's also another plot. If you by mistake took a USB stick and you thought that the presentation would be on the stick, that's a part of the video as well. I think you did. So there is actually nothing. Maybe a virus. But so, okay, but let's then start. So thanks for coming. This is a presentation that I've meant to give for a long time now. Well, there just wasn't the opportunity before, and now I told myself that I should really present this material or these studies that we've done at HIIT before it's completely outdated. So about myself, as most of you, at least I think all of you know, so I work here at EIT Digital, but also on the side I do research, and I still have my researcher hat at HIIT, Helsinki Institute for Information Technology, and also at the Center for Service Research at Hanken Business School. So what I'm now going to tell you about during this presentation is I'm going to summarize and very, very sort of a popularized way the results of two research projects that we conducted at HIIT. The first one was called AVEA, and the second one was called ARMS. And especially this ARMS project was acquisition, retention, monetization of virtual social spaces. Could have been called gamification. It was just that the term didn't exist at the time, and we were basically looking at virtual design patterns that actually were shifting to other areas in the digital space, and then that turned out to be more or less like gamification. So that's sort of the starting point of the discussion. We published several articles on the subject, and what I should say to begin with. So I've been looking at this from service marketing perspective. Service marketing perspective, because what is typically gamified are services, and although the term gamification was introduced maybe 2008 by one blogger in an industry setting and took off very rapidly. So it was something like we can see the gamification of non-game-like services, and then that took off and spread very fast in the industry, but the academic sector, remained quite passive for a very long time. And mainly then in the game studies, they took a look at the phenomenon, and maybe the most cited definition of gamification is from that realm, and it says that gamification is using game-like elements in non-game contexts. But that doesn't really help you to situate that in a business environment in any way. So that was the starting point why we then looked at the gamification from a business point, and especially then from the service angle. And the papers that we published have received a considerable number of citations. You can easily find them through my blog or my LinkedIn page or so. But I will now then go and introduce roughly the main ideas which this service theory is based on, and you need to have in order to understand how we sort of went forward. So in service marketing theory, the customer is always involved in the production of the service. You can imagine yourself in a dentist chair and not opening your mouth. So it is really much about taking part in the production. What is also then true is that if you look at the benefit that you get from going to a dentist, it's actually about oral care or oral health. And if you look at that in a more sort of a wider perspective, you are actually you can be the sole producer of that service by brushing your teeth or flossing your teeth. And so this sort of self-service approach has then spread widely in some industries. For example, at the gas stations, nearly all gas stations are now self-service gas stations. But some companies embrace it more widely than that. For example, IKEA, IKEA, you have to not only go and you can use the self-service cashier at the IKEA, or then you need to take care of the delivery yourself, but also then the assembly of the furniture. Now, when we look at games from this perspective, we know that games require player participation as well. Many game definitions, however, don't actually mention the players at all. They are sort of very systemic. They talk about rules, they talk about goals and such. But the participation of the individual is lacking. However, if you think about games, if you think about playing tennis, for example, to your game experience, it's very important how well you, so what is your skill level, or what is your knowledge about the game. And not only for you is this important, so in a way, you are your own producer of your game experience, but you can also be then the producer of the other players as well. So your skills, your knowledge level has a very big impact on the other person's experience as well. And one more further thing is that in all cases, sort of the experience of gamefulness is a very individual one. Some people can experience stock market as a game. Others fear of going to a horse race. So it's always a sort of a very, very delicate shift between what is a game, what is not. We all have a different sort of conception of what a game is. So let me now go further to another sort of theoretical construction. This was about customer being a co-producer of service. Now, if we talk about services or service systems, they can be divided in three. So we have core services. If we take an airline, the core service is taking people from one place to another. That's the core service. Then there are enabling services that are attached to this core service that you need to do in order to be able to serve the customers, to take them from A to B. Check-in services are typical of this. This is also true also in hospitality services. You need to check into a hotel. You can do that in a self-service desk, or you can do that on a service desk. And then you have enhancing services, which are the differentiating things. All of us who take Finnair know now that this is not the reality anymore. We have blueberry soup, and that's it. So it's a differentiating thing. So in these projects, in ARMS and in Avea projects, we looked at digital services and thought about how these sort of game-like features have been implemented. We took a look at games like World of Warcraft and the badges, which are like you get from one level to another. And then we took a look at other sort of social media related services like Foursquare. Foursquare is maybe now outdated, but it was a very hype-like service at the time, where you could check into a cafe, and you could be a mayor of the cafe if you checked in very regularly, and then you could get some discounts, for example, for the cups of coffee that you bought. So what we actually discovered, and what we wrote our papers about, was that gamification means improving a service or a product with gameful experiences. That's sort of a very popularized definition of gamification. The more sort of a theoretical one is down at the bottom. Enhancing a service with affordances for gameful experiences in order to support users' overall value creation. Okay. What we discovered is that there is nothing much new under the sun. This is a gamified system. You can gamify sort of learning literature, introducing it to a card game. That's a gamified way of learning. We have gamified systems like you can go to a coffee shop and get these sorts of loyalty coupons where you get a free drink or a food in the end. This is a photo of my loyalty cards that I found in my wallet this morning. So there are plenty of things that have been around for ages and ages, and now we sort of say that okay, this is gamification when before we called them with another name. However, maybe it's not completely in vain what we did. We discovered, well, now we're not seeing everything, that it's not all about technology. So we looked at digital games and digital services in the beginning, but we discovered that okay, we can find this in other areas too. One of my best or favorite examples of very successful gamification is from this grocery store in Berkeley. So what happens is when you go to this store, you will find in the entrance a little paper poster saying, "Find Oski." Oski is this little teddy bear, which is the mascot of University of California's California Berkeley's sports team. What the employers did every day was that they hid this Oski teddy bear somewhere on the shelves of the retail store, and then they challenged the kids of the customers to find it. And So the outcome was that as a parent, you could enter the store and you could have all the time you needed without your kids crying that when are we going to leave, when are we going to leave? Because they were having a blast of trying to find Oski. Finally, completely by coincidence, of course, the Oski was somewhere near the entrance, the exit. And when then the kids found it, they told the cashier that, okay, Oski is there, and then they got a goodie bag or nuts or something like that for a prize. So it was a gamified system which had no technology at all involved. But a great one because it really, really supported the core service of going to a shop. So it's not about technology, it's really about understanding your customers. Another favorite example of mine is this. You can also gamify products. So if you think about products as activities or services that you are using products to render services for yourself, you can easily, by changing your own mindset, find ways to gamify those. So what I mean here is that we had a hybrid car in California, and I got this habit of trying to hypermile, so trying to save gas, and this was only due to the fact that I could monitor my gas usage. So the producer of the car had made it easy for me to create a sort of a game for myself. I always try to get a better performance by the way I drove. And of course, this was completely in line with the car company's mission as well. So, by making a clear difference of the core service and then the enhancing service, which is the gamifying service, you can then also identify other possibilities. You can, for example, gamify non-commercial activities like jogging, which is done, and you can make money by gamifying it. So you can now purchase all sorts of devices that help you monitor your performance, and you can then also, for example, with Heia Heia, make that social, that experience. And both are gamifying a typically non-commercial activity that you do by yourself. However, Kekkonen, our beloved old president, has shown us that you can also do it yourself. So I don't know if you're familiar with this example, but what Kekkonen did in order to keep in shape was that he always had a scale beside his bed. So he never went to sleep without weighing himself. So he had gamified sort of weight loss or keeping in shape for himself in a very easy way. Again, not about technology, and understanding that it's not only the company that can gamify things, it's also the customers. And not only can you gamify things for yourself, but you can also gamify the things for your friends. Another example is parkour, which is an activity that you do in a city setting where you hop and use the urban landscape for doing physical activities. And there are certain rules which you have to obey, and then this gives you a different way of looking at going in an urban environment. Or then you can also do it with your customers. You can make put a dartboard in your bar and have your customers compete with each other. It can be a dart, it can be board games. You are gamifying. Even if you don't have any games, you can just induce them to have a drinking game. So people are very much drawn by games, and sometimes all you need to do is to facilitate that process. So, to sum up, some takeaway points. I would like you to remember that gamification is not about technology. It's very crucial that you identify your core service and make sure that the gamification does not go against it. This is especially important here in Finland. We have a big and a very powerful game industry. But gamification industry is different from game industry. I've talked about this many times with professionals here in Finland, and this is still a sort of an open question. Who should be doing gamification? Is it the consulting companies? Is it the service design companies? Is it the game companies? Probably not, because they would like to make the best game ever. But if you are doing gamification, you need to keep in mind that the core service is improved and that the core service, the core business, is not diminished because of the gamification. Then you should think about how can you facilitate these gameful experiences. And this is important that you understand that we can only facilitate these gameful experiences because the customers themselves are the ones who must engage and must co-produce them. So we can't say that, okay, this is going to happen because people are different. You need to get them engaged, and they are the ones who then finally produce them. That's just the nature of games. And then you should think about who are you gamifying the service for. This is exactly the sort of the point in the Trader Joe's retail store or grocery store example. Your customers may be the parents, but you are gamifying the service for their kids, because that will actually improve the whole service experience of all the customers. And then you should ask, can your customers do the gamification for you? Basically, there are 4 types of gamifiers. It can be the company, it can be an outsider company, it can be the customer, or another customer for the customers. So keep in mind these options, and it doesn't really matter who does the gamification, but a company should know where to position itself. And that's then sort of the end of my short talk. And if you have questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
As you said, the gamification concept has been already there, but we were not aware that it's called gamification. And it's not only...
Well, the concept wasn't there, but the phenomenon, yes.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So why is it a hot topic now? Although you said it's not only technology, about technology. So I would assume that it's a hot topic now, gamification, because of the advances in technology. But it's not only technological. So why is it kind of focused now, focused?
Well, it's most probably because of exactly as you said. So technology has sort of put it on in the front, and there are more and more persuasive technologies. And maybe this came in the public sort of sphere in 2010. We had a lot of games using all sorts of retention and monetization technologies that were not sustainable. They were based on maximizing profits very fast and using sort of not very sort of psychologically good ways of persuading people, and that backfired very rapidly then. And now we have to see, we talk about extrinsic and intrinsic motivations, and if you're just using extrinsic motivations, then most probably people are not going to stay for long as your customer. You need to find a more sustainable way to motivate people to use your services. But that's not easy. But many of these technologies or many of these design features have been then, are now called or are seen as being part of the umbrella of what is called gamification. Tatu?
You were talking about gamification of services, but how about gamification of work, and how would that work? So how do we make our work here more gameful experience other than having nice bonuses that we try to score as many as possible? But in software development they have these sprints and scrum development or whatever that are maybe a little bit in that direction, and of course the bonuses and that things maybe bringing this common work to that direction, and we all know that the best experiences that we have at work life is when you are like in a game of conquering the world or beating an opponent or something and it can be very rewarding, but how can we artificially or intentionally make that kind of gamification of work environment? What it suits and what it doesn't suit for?
Well, I think, thanks for the question, very, very adequate and important. I think, so when we talk about gamification, we have, we have a mindset of we have to be very goal-oriented and then we have these rewards. Of course, I mean, all of us who work at Aalto, for example, we have a sort of a career path system in our workplace, and we have these development discussions which are sort of along these lines that they should motivate us. However, if we just stamp on a game on top of it and we give rewards, I mean, stock options can be seen as a badge or a reward in that direction. They can work for a while, but people are usually not motivated by these extrinsic things for a very long time. There have been many studies, for example, of young kids playing an instrument, and they love playing a violin. And once you start paying them, they actually lose their motivation to play anymore. So it can be completely the opposite. And so to come back to your question, what should we do? I think we should maybe introduce yet another term, which would be playification. That we should have a more a playful atmosphere at workplaces where we are not competing against each other, but we would be playing with ideas, and especially important for innovation. And I'm referring to the innovation jams that we've had with Google folks, where we would embrace the ideas of others and build on top of them. Whereas if we see it as a game where we should win, that maybe won't be very sustainable in the long run. For the last point, for example, I remember very well Satama, the trainer's house, they had this sort of, I think it was called does anyone remember Blast or Blurb or something like that? A business sort of a LARP, which I think just failed terribly because of making people compete against each other at the workplace, and it just has a demotivating effect.
Yeah, actually my question is about that. Now, before we go and gamify everything, is there research which shows us that it is actually worth it? That if you gamify your business, it'll actually be more successful and more profitable?
Well, there's no such research, because some gamifications are successful and others are not. So you can't say that all gamification is good. But I do think that you know, there are very good ways to gamify or playify things. Playification is, by the way, something that has been studied more at HIIT and Kai Puikkaniemi and his folks. So I'm not, you know, that well informed about all the things related to playification, but yeah. But, or Melanie.
Yeah, so my question is, are there any ways to determine whether gamification will work effectively in a service or not? Because I assume in certain services it's not going to work. Like if you want to get things done straight away and get to the point kind of a thing, probably won't work. So are there any ways to determine where it would work and where it won't work?
Well, obviously, I mean, there are many ways of determining. I mean, just looking at sort of doing studies, and we, my colleagues formerly at HIIT and now at the Tampere University, they've done sort of studies which are contradictory. I mean, in some cases, just doesn't work. It can be completely the other way around. Putting badges in systems, and you think that, you know, that would induce people to use the system more, or then you just don't see any significant, you know.
More of trial and error kind of a thing.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, if you have a very good setup of you know, before and after, I mean, of course it's doable to study that. How does it alter? And especially if you have a digital service where you can easily monitor the use of the service, and when you add on then features, you can easily modify, and you can then quantify the use, the number of you know, people logging into the system, and how long they are using it, and the retention levels and so on. So that's pretty doable, I would say.
Should all these gamification features be developed or created by the own team of the company, or can be trusted to a third-party company? And what happens when, taking for example, airline loyalty programs, when this enhancing service becomes part of the core service? Because nowadays everyone expects to have some kind of mileage system in the airlines, or to get some kind of points. What happens when you get this transition from enhancing the service to the customer now feels that it's part of the core service?
Right. So what was the first part of the question again? Should it be given to a third party? So, for example, if we take Foursquare, basically Foursquare is a company. If you look at it from the way that we're looking at, it is a company that gamifies other services. So there, for example, a Starbucks coffee, where you go, Starbucks is not gamifying anything. It's Foursquare who adds a sort of a social layer on top of the coffee experience, and then the Starbucks can benefit from that feature if they can just observe it, and they are monitoring such activity. And especially important if that then becomes so important that it becomes part of the core service, what people expect. And I think then you just have to then realize that then the business is shifting, or you are no longer in the traveling business, but you are, you know, giving loyalty card points and actually some sort of brand management. So the whole point in the way we are looking at it is that you have to be aware of the different possibilities where the customer is looking at the service. Many times the service providers see only what they are providing, but consumers are no longer doing that. They are taking elements from all over. It can be third-party companies, it can be their friends, they can do add-ons, and if companies are not aware of this, they can miss big opportunities. Any more questions? If not, then there are still some sandwiches. Have a nice weekend, and thanks for joining.
Very interesting. Aina.